On June 6th, one of 2023's biggest games will arrive in the fiery form of Diablo IV. But what awaits you down in those infernal dungeons? Well, wouldn't you like to know? We sat down with art director John Mueller, associate game director Joe Piepiora, and sorcerer class character voice actor Joseph Balderrama to get a heads up on all the new features and Easter eggs you can expect, as well as some expert advice on how to build your character. But we'd love to hear from you too, so be sure to hit the comments afterwards to let us know what you're most looking forward to in Diablo IV. First, I spoke to them about Diablo 4's recent Server Slam event, which gave players the chance to get to grips with the upcoming dungeon crawler and square off with a ferocious new foe. And players weren't the only ones racking up some valuable experience points in the process, with the beta test helping devs to fine-tune that early encounter.
We had a lot of players get to dive into the server and try to take down Asheva as one of our first world bosses the players are going to be able to experience in Diablo 4. They had a really difficult time going through and actually managing to defeat Asheva, which we already knew was going to be a big challenge to them, being they only were level 20 and Asheva is actually level 25. I think we did a good job in terms of like messaging that we have these two difficulty tiers, but we did make an adjustment to her health. Towards the end of the experience, we made a hotfix where you kind of reduce that a little bit.
Using the feedback from events like the Server Slam, the Diablo 4 devs are crafting a game which is accessible enough for newcomers, but still provides the sort of diabolical challenge that seasoned demon slayers crave.
As we're looking forward into the actual launch of Diablo 4, we're just thinking about the lowest level availability of the world bosses and how we want to tune some of those encounters to make it a little bit easier for some players to kind of initially get into without sacrificing too much of the end game difficulty of these same encounters later on in the experience.
When you're starting a new game in Diablo 4, you're immediately confronted with the all-important question, which class do you want to play as? The choice can be a bit overwhelming for Diablo veterans, but even more so for franchise newcomers. But fortunately, the devs had some advice.
So I don't think there's really a bad class for players to try initially when they're playing Diablo 4. But if you want to play something that's particularly straightforward, then I would say that the sorcerer and sorceress, that class is very easy for a player to initially get into and understand. But really, there's no wrong decision to make. We want to make sure that in Diablo 4 that we unveil the depth and complexity of classes over time. It's not really until level 2 that you make your first choice in terms of what skill you actually want to be able to play with. You have a kind of a default one to start. And from there, as you're kind of progressing your character and uncovering how certain aspects of it work, we do slowly unveil those things and make sure that you have the context to know why you might make a decision.
While it's always tempting to immediately start trying to piece together the ultimate build, Diablo 4 really encourages you to pick up whatever you think sounds fun.
For the sorceress in particular, you're kind of choosing from like fire abilities or lightning abilities or cold abilities, and it's pretty easy to imagine what fantasy do I want to pursue? What feels exciting to me?
The nice thing about Diablo is you can create multiple characters, and you can kind of figure out what fits your playstyle. I never thought that I would be such a rogue player, because I always thought of myself as I really like melee classes, but I think for me that's where I just realized wow, I actually really just love the agility of the class, and I love a lot of the ultimates and things like that.
So, now that we know how newcomers should handle themselves, what about returning Diablo fans? What new stuff do they have to look forward to in the fourth game? The devs told me about how some ever-changing environments and new world events can lead even the most seasoned Diablo player to always be fretful of what's around the corner.
Because we have this more fixed world that you're kind of exploring and wandering through, there's a lot of opportunities to kind of modify that, provide new content opportunities inside of that space. So, as you're wandering through the world, you'll find local events, what we call them. You might find that a band of villagers have been attacked by bandits or monsters, and you go there and help them and fight them off and get some rewards for that. Next time you pass through, there might be a broken carriage there, and it's actually a trap laid by bandits for you. And then we have other things like you mentioned world events. So as the player is going around the world, there are these parts of Sanctuary that have basically been taken by these massive creatures. During the recent betas we've done in the past, we actually had a big focus on Asheva, who is one of our first world bosses the players are going to come across when playing through Diablo 4. She's a menace. She's a towering creature, with these massive like wings and huge claws. And players are gonna have to work together with other players nearby to come and take down beasts of this size. It's kind of cool. We get really epic with it, where you like pull the camera back and you can see a little more of the field. You can see all these other characters that are trying to fight this massive, massive monster at the same time. It makes for a pretty exciting experience.
Diablo IV isn't just about epic boss fights and endless loot though. The new game also aims to tell an immersive story about the battle between heaven and hell and the pure human saps caught in the between. And yes, that does mean me and you.
We knew it early on that we wanted to tell this story about Lillith and Inarius because it was such a compelling story about, you know, the sort of creators of Sanctuary. You know, we knew that the world of Sanctuary was going to be a major supporting character, and that they dovetailed nicely into like that narrative about the large open world and just like exploration of that and meeting all the people and seeing which sides people have chosen. There's the Triune who are worshiping Lilith and trying to, you know, bring about essentially like a new age. And then there's Inarius and all of his followers with the Order of the Light, and they have this very sort of puritanical approach to purging evil in the world. And so you get to see how that plays out in all the villages and towns and the different locations. And, you know, so when you have this huge open contiguous world and all those little stories and how they're interpreted, it just makes for a really compelling experience to go explore, find these little bits of details and kind of piece it all together.
If you have to choose between one side or the other, I think I probably would choose Team Lilith. But really, Mom and Dad are both pretty bad.
They're pretty bad.
They're pretty bad. So
it's a messy situation.
It's a very messy situation. I wish they wouldn't involve us in this particular feud they have.
Players are kind of like in the middle. You know, there's a group called the Herodrum who are sort of the protectors and defenders of, you know, humanity, and that's who you're kind of grouped with. So, you know, you're sort of in this neutral space, but you get pulled in both directions through various like parts of the narrative. We've really leaned into narrative. You know, we put your character into our in-game cutscenes,
yeah,
which is really exciting.
Diablo has always been a story that's kind of like told a bit from the player's perspective about the events of the Eternal Conflict and the things that are happening there. But now, particularly in Diablo IV, being able to take the player, the Wanderer, you know, as we call them sometimes, and really put them front and center in the middle of the experience, not as much a passive observer. It's been really exciting, a big change for us in Diablo IV.
To bring the player characters to life even further, Diablo IV has called on some extremely talented voice actors to provide different vocals depending on which class and gender you pick. If you play as a male sorcerer, then you'll have the dulcet tones of veteran voice actor Joseph Balderrama to accompany you, a sound that will be very familiar to anyone that's played It Takes Two. And while Diablo 4's hellish world is a long way from the one Cody was platforming his way through, Balderrama was immediately impressed by it.
I was just so taken with how beautiful it was and how sort of, it just looks, you know, I've seen more now and it just looks, to me, it looks like a painting. It's so much more than just a sort of game about hell, you know, there's such high artwork in there, which only adds to the player experience, not just a Commoner Gardener RPG. I don't think it's got a lot more going on in terms of the experience and the artistry that's gone into making it look and feel the way it does. I think is amazing.
The voice actors clearly have plenty to work with thanks to Activision Blizzard's wonderful art design, but Balderrama also drew inspiration from a slightly surprising source.
This is going to sound so bizarre, but he doesn't sound anything like him, but in my mind's eye, I had like Arnold Schwarzenegger from the Terminator in my head when I was thinking about the sorcerer, because he's this sort of like calm under all circumstances guy.
So it seems the developers were right, you should go with the sorcerer if you want to live. And just because I'm nosy, I asked what it was like to record all the grunts and scream sounds that player characters tend to make a lot.
Normally they tag it on at the end of a session, because vocally they're the most challenging sequences that you'll do. So you won't do a whole session of just grunts and screams and so on, but often they will also try and just minimize them because you end up doing so many through your time that you don't have to do a lot at one go. So yeah, you just kind of will tag it on at the end of a session. You know, the last 10 minutes maybe you'll be jumping, leaping, dying, punching, all that stuff.
Safe to say, you'll hear a lot of those in Diablo 4. Another tool that's being used to make the player feel more connected with their character is Diablo IV's new Cosmetic System. I asked the devs how this works and what players can expect in terms of decking their Wanderer out.
Once you get into the world, one of the really great things to do is when you start just being able to like transmog all the gear in the wardrobe and mix and match different pieces of gear that you find. And there's a lot of really wonderful thematic kind of different visual stories that you can kind of collect, like whether you're a necromancer, whether you're a sorcerer, or whether you're a druid. All that gear is unique to those characters. The gear systems are all unique to like make those player fantasies. Like if you're a barbarian, like all of that armor that you find is going to like really make you look like an awesome barbarian, but then you can start to mix and match all the pieces to kind of make it your own.
Yeah, that's really important. So as you find, like we have tons and tons of different like appearances for all the armor and gear the players can acquire and wear in Diablo 4. When you find ones that you like, you can basically take those pieces back to like the blacksmith in town. Whenever you salvage those, you're going to unlock that appearance for yourself in the wardrobe system. You can go and access from the various like taverns throughout the game. You can change all your gear to look like whatever you want. So to John's point, you can mix and match those pieces. Maybe you really like the way that this particular helmet looks, but man, you love those boots, and you get to kind of play with all of those things. Then you can also dye those pieces as well, and sort of change the colors, and in some cases, like almost like a little bit of like the material almost.
Sure, absolutely. It just really allows you to make your own, a little bit of your own fashion choices in the world, which is kind of fun, and it's all about making it an experience that's really custom to you.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to see your character up close in these cinematics, and
you want to look good,
you want to look good,
or dangerous, or deadly.
Diablo 4 will be coming to a whole range of platforms on June 6, but the developers explained that for a truly infernal experience, you'll definitely want to boot it up on the Xbox Series X.
Couch co-op on Series X is pretty fun. We've done quite a bit of it around the office, and it's I think it's we also have great features on Series X like ray tracing and support for higher resolution textures, and like it really plays wonderfully on the X. It's my go-to console. I think one of my favorite stories I heard was it was a dad and son that were playing, and the son was the barbarian. So the dad was playing the support with the archer, with the rogue. So I think like couch co-op is one of those things that brings families together and friends in a way that I think very few games do these days.
Finally, it's safe to say that the dungeons of Diablo are crawling with more than just bad guys and loot. There are also plenty of Easter eggs and hidden secrets to uncover. And while the developers weren't willing to totally spill the beans to me, they did drop a few hints while talking about designing Sanctuary.
I'm really excited for players to discover some of the hidden stuff that not just that I had a hand in, but also that the dev team in general has put in the game. There's a lot of detail out in the world, particularly if you're digging into things and looking around very carefully. I think that you'll be rewarded for that.
I would say that the world itself is very handcrafted. I think this is the thing that Blizzard really we really had the time and space to make the world, to put little things all throughout the world to discover. This kind of open world game that's specific to an ARPG camera and sort of like our gameplay style. The world is built for combat. Right, so every square inch was built to fight in, to make fighting fun, to make combat fun, but also all these little secrets and lore elements that are kind of sprinkled throughout the world. You find, doors with keys that you're like, I don't know how to, what is this? But then you might go discover a quest that talks about a door or has something of like, oh, I remember that. I now have a way to get into that door and discover a quest that you had no, it's like really kind of wonderful way to, just make the experience personal, is that discovery of the open world. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing players see.
Naturally, we'll have more to reveal about Diablo 4 as the big day approaches, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to hear all about it. Bye!